She invited me to a fancy Christmas dinner, then handed me the bill. I never expected revenge to taste this sweet. It was Christmas evening, the streets glowing with lights, snow softly falling, and festive music filling the air. My stepdaughter had called me earlier that week, inviting me to a luxurious dinner at one of the most expensive restaurants in town. I thought it was a gesture of goodwill, a chance to enjoy family time. I had no idea it was a setup for something far more satisfying. The restaurant was lavish, chandeliers sparkling above, tables adorned with fine cutlery, and the smell of gourmet food filling the air. I took my seat, watching her with curiosity. She looked calm, elegant, and somehow mischievous. Everything seemed normal. The drinks arrived, the appetizers, and then the main course. We talked, laughed politely, but there was an undercurrent, a subtle tension I couldn't place. And then, it happened. As I reached for my wallet, she smiled sweetly and handed me the check. The moment I saw the total, my jaw dropped. It was astronomical. Every ounce of politeness vanished, replaced by a sudden clarity. I had walked straight into her carefully planned revenge. I glanced at her. Her smile was innocent, but her eyes were gleaming with triumph. She had orchestrated this entire evening, not just for fun, but as a lesson I would never forget. I realized in that moment, this wasn't just dinner. This was her way of turning the tables, a playful yet sharp revenge that hit me where it mattered most, my pride. As I stared at the bill, I realized she had thought of everything. Every detail of the evening, every course, every drink, it was all part of her plan. She had invited me under the guise of a polite Christmas dinner, but the reality was far from innocent. "I hope you enjoyed the evening," she said sweetly, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Her calm demeanor made it even more impressive. She had me completely fooled until the final moment. I tried to hide my shock as I reached for my wallet, but it was too late. Her revenge had already taken effect. I remembered all the little things I had done that she had never forgiven. Moments I had ignored, rules I had bent, or things I had taken for granted. And now she was showing me, quietly, cleverly, and painfully, just how much those actions mattered. I took a deep breath, realizing this wasn't anger I was feeling. It was admiration. Her planning, her patience, and her perfect execution left me both impressed and slightly humbled. She had turned a simple dinner into a lesson I would never forget. And at that moment, I knew I was completely under her control, in the most polite, festive, and brilliant way possible. I finally looked up from the bill, trying to mask my embarrassment. She sat there calmly, sipping her drink, clearly enjoying every second of my reaction. I laughed nervously, hoping to play it off. "Wow, you really went all out," I said, trying to sound casual. She smiled innocently, but I could see the tiny smirk hiding behind it. Her satisfaction was evident. The more I tried to hide my shock, the more she leaned into it. Every conversation, every polite gesture was part of her performance. It wasn't just about the bill, it was about the control, the power of turning the tables. I realized then how clever she was. She had planned this for weeks, maybe months. Every detail, from the choice of restaurant to the timing of the courses, had been calculated to make this moment perfect. I couldn't help but admire her skill. It was revenge, yes, but playful, calculated, and incredibly effective. I knew one thing for sure. I had underestimated her, and I would never make that mistake again. Just when I thought the dinner couldn't get any more humiliating, she added her final touch. The dessert arrived, a luxurious chocolate tower, elegantly plated. And tucked beside it was a small note. "Hope you enjoyed your Christmas gift, the joy of paying your own way." I couldn't help but laugh. She had turned what I expected to be a festive evening into a masterclass in subtle revenge. Every gesture, every course, every polite smile had been carefully orchestrated. She hadn't yelled, hadn't confronted me, hadn't embarrassed me in front of the staff. Instead, she had let the experience speak for itself, quietly, elegantly, and ruthlessly. I realized the brilliance of her plan. It wasn't about anger or meanness. It was about teaching a lesson with precision. A lesson I would remember every Christmas from now on. As we left the restaurant, I looked at her and smiled. "You got me this time," I admitted. Her laughter was soft, victorious, and full of satisfaction. That Christmas, I learned that revenge doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes the quiet, clever ones hit the hardest. The drive home was quiet, but my mind was racing. I kept thinking about every detail of the evening, the laughter, the polite smiles, the extravagant bill, and how cleverly she had orchestrated it all. I realized something important. This wasn't just about money or embarrassment. It was about respect, awareness, and understanding the consequences of my actions. She had shown me, in the most subtle yet powerful way, that even small things can be remembered and turned into lessons. I pulled into the driveway and turned to her. "You know, you really got me tonight," I said, smiling genuinely. She grinned back, eyes twinkling with pride. That night, I went to bed feeling both humbled and impressed. Her cleverness had taught me a lesson I would never forget, and I knew from that day forward I would always think twice before underestimating her. Christmas had brought more than festive joy. It had brought a masterclass in clever, subtle revenge. And in the end, I couldn't help but admire her ingenuity,